Let's talk about the immune system. When I say immune system, most people have a pretty good idea of what the function is. And typically, what do they say? It fights infection. And that's true. The immune system does fight infection, but it's really a lot more than that. The immune system helps to protect the body against pathogens. When we think about a pathogen, it's much more than just something that causes infection. A pathogen is anything that can cause disease, including microorganisms like bacteria or fungi or parasites or viruses, chemicals, even toxins like poisons. All of these are considered pathogens, and we have mechanisms in the immune system to help defend us against all of these. The immune system involves 3 lines of defense. The first line of defense is a non-specific defense. That means that it works against many different types of pathogens. It's not just specific to one particular pathogen. The role of the first line of defense of the immune system is to keep pathogens out. If you can keep them out of the body, they're not going to cause a problem. Unfortunately, pathogens do have a way of getting into the body, and then we have to invoke our second line of defense. The second line of defense is also a non-specific defense, so it works against lots of different types of pathogens. And the second line of defense is how we are able to contain or destroy pathogens after they have gotten into the body. And we're going to talk about several different mechanisms involved in that second line of defense that will destroy pathogens once they get in. The third line of defense is our specific immunity. The third line of defense is an immune response that is against a specific pathogen. It's very particular to that certain pathogen. This is a very robust or a strong response to destroy that particular pathogen, but it doesn't work against other things. I think the first line of defense is awesome because it keeps pathogens out of the body. What do you think is the main organ involved in keeping pathogens out of our bodies? Yep, it's the skin. Your skin is part of your immune system in that it is the first line of defense for keeping pathogens out of your body. The skin is an excellent barrier. It has a lot of physical and chemical features that help keep pathogens out of the body. Let's think about the physical features of the skin that make it a good barrier. First off, think about the type of tissue that the skin is made of. It's made of stratified squamous epithelium. Stratified squamous epithelium is many layers of flat cells. Many layers of cells make it hard for pathogens to get through. And these layers of cells are held together by tight junctions, which means that pathogens would have a very difficult time wiggling through between the cells and would have to go through the cells. In addition to having many layers of cells, the stratified squamous epithelium of the skin is keratinized. That means there's a layer of keratin on the surface of the epithelial cells, and that makes it even more difficult for pathogens to penetrate. In addition to the physical barrier, there are a number of chemical features of the skin that make it a great part of the first line of defense. First off, think about the surface of the skin. Is it damp or is it dry? And do microorganisms prefer to live in damp environments or dry environments? Right. Organisms like to thrive in damp environments, and the surface of the skin is relatively dry. That makes it harder for things to grow on it. In addition to that dry surface, the skin is also very salty. Now, I'm not going to ask you to lick your arms, but if you did, you would taste the salt on the surface of the skin. That high level of salt also makes it more difficult for microorganisms to grow on the skin. Add to that the fact that the skin has a relatively low pH. If you compare it to the pH of the inside of the body, the skin pH is lower, and that also inhibits the growth of organisms that could make us sick. In addition to simply being dry with a low pH and a high salt content, we also have an enzyme that is found on the surface of the skin called lysozyme. Lysozyme is excreted in the sweat and in the oils of the skin, and lysozyme is an enzyme that breaks down the cell walls of bacteria, and so it helps protect against any bacteria that get onto the skin. The skin is great for defending the outer surface of the body, but it doesn't help very much with the inside of the body because we don't have skin inside our bodies. But the parts of our bodies that are open to the outside are lined with mucous membranes. And these mucous membranes are part of the first line of defense. Mucous membranes line the digestive system, the respiratory system, the urinary system, and the reproductive system, all of the body systems that open to the outside. And the mucous membranes help keep pathogens from getting through the membrane into the body. One of the ways mucous membranes keep pathogens from getting in the body is that mucous membranes produce mucus, which is sticky and traps pathogens before they can get into the body. Some mucous membranes, like those lining the respiratory tract, have cilia, or little hair-like projections that wave to move the dirty mucus out. The respiratory system cilia move the dirty mucus out of the respiratory tract and up to the mouth, where we swallow it and it goes down into the stomach. It sounds kind of disgusting, but it's actually pretty effective. What's in the stomach that would destroy pathogens? The stomach has a very low pH, and it also contains digestive enzymes. And so any pathogens that are coming up from the respiratory system end up in the stomach, where the acid and the low pH of the stomach can destroy them. A lot of the mucous membranes are also protected by a flow of fluid. Fluids flow across the membrane and help to flush pathogens out. For example, tears flowing across the surface of the eye can flush pathogens off the eyes. Saliva flowing in the mouth helps to flush pathogens out of the mouth and off the teeth. And urine flowing out of the urethra helps to flush pathogens out of the open end of the urethra to help prevent UTIs. Another protective feature of the mucous membranes is that the mucous membranes and a lot of the fluids associated with them contain lysozyme to break down bacterial cell walls. One of my favorite parts of the first line of defense is the normal flora. The normal flora are the microorganisms like bacteria that are normally present on and in your body and help protect against pathogenic organisms that could take hold and cause diseases. So as much as we don't like to think about it, the surface of our bodies is completely covered in bacteria. Typically, these are good bacteria that help us preventing the growth of bad bacteria that could make us sick. One good example of normal flora is Staphylococcus epidermidis. This is a bacterium that lives on the surface of our skin. We are all colonized with Staphylococcus epidermidis, or Staph epi for short. When our skin is colonized with Staph epi, it takes up space where more pathogenic bacteria would be able to grow. For example, MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, grows better on skin that doesn't have Staphylococcus epidermidis on it. This is one of the reasons you want to be a little bit careful with the use of a lot of antibacterial products, because antibacterial products will destroy your normal flora and therefore leave more opportunities for pathogens to grow on the surface of your skin. A second example of an important part of our normal flora, especially for women, is lactobacillus. Lactobacillus is a group of bacteria that live in the vagina, and here's a picture of a vaginal cell in pink, and then in this dark purple you can see the bacillus bacteria around it. When bacillus grow in the vagina, they prevent or at least limit the growth of Candida albicans. So here's Candida on this side, and this is what's responsible for causing yeast infections. So as long as you have a good supply of the lactobacillus, then you don't tend to get a yeast infection. I know a lot of women who anytime they take antibiotics are at risk for a yeast infection because the antibiotics kill off their lactobacillus and then the yeast can grow.